Good morning, world, and welcome to the inaugural GRIMMCon. My name is Bryson Bort, aka Grim, and so happy to have all of you here joining us today. First of all, big thank you to Black Hills Information Systems, Jason Blanchard and John Strand. You've been amazing in helping us put this on such short notice. And of course, to all of the wonderful GRIM staff that have helped make this happen. On the Discord server, please pay attention to the code of conduct. Just like a regular conference, we're making sure that folks behave themselves so that this is an open event for everybody. If you have questions and answers for speakers, you can ask them inside the GoToWebinar control panel, and the MC or the speaker will work with you to get your questions answered. If your questions don't get answered, or you would like to chat with the speaker afterward, you can find them in the track 1 or track 2 channel on Discord. Make sure that you're signed into Discord. We've got LobbyCon going with all sorts of different folks. The virtual car hacking village is there. You can find information about our COBOL CTF. Thank you to Robert Leali for the virtual car hacking village and Sam Bone for the COBOL CTF. And we have all sorts of channels across a variety of topics, including resume reviews, hiring village, and just about anything you can imagine. We have a help desk set up if you have questions or concerns. That is grimm-co.com, as well as, since this is the first time we're doing this, we'd love your feedback so that we can make it a better experience. So send those to grimm-co.com. One of the things that we miss with the virtual world is, of course, besides the people, which is what Discord is there for, is the swag. We got you covered. There is virtual swag available at www.hackerswagbag.com, as well as physical swag. So if you want stickers, we'll be posting a form up on Discord. Sign up and we'll mail stickers out to you. And then the last thank you I would like to give is to all of the coaches. So one of the things that we did here that's pretty new is in the new speaker track, every new speaker was assigned a coach to help them build their presentation and their speaking before the conference. And so big thank you to all of the volunteers and all the coaches that helped make that happen. Finally, we've got 2 keynotes today. Kicking it off is the inestimable Tarah Wheeler, and then later on we'll have Dave Kennedy. So in the meantime, let's go over to Tarah to start things off.
Thank you so much, Bryson. It is an honor to be here today. I also want to thank the entire Grimm and Scythe crew. Thanks so much, Bryson, to you, to Nina Ali, to Renee Small and Christophe Foulon. Thanks so much to all of the folks that put this together on not only just such short notice, but with such a warm and generous spirit and welcoming, especially to new speakers right now. It's incredibly important to make sure that we keep open doors in the InfoSec community right now, when it would be so easy to close in on ourselves and become more insular and only talk to the people we know. I'm excited by the opportunity to get to meet some of you later on in the Discord. I'll be there after this, and I'm really looking forward to it. So what am I doing here this morning? Well, first of all, during Bryson's introduction, I just realized that my face hurt from smiling that much for that long. I'm clearly out of practice on that one. So if my face looks a little weird, it's because I have quarantine smile, I think, at this point. So I'm Tarah. I have been doing InfoSec for a while, not as long as some, a little longer than others. And I think, like everyone else here, I love the beauty and complexity of this field. I hope I stay a lifelong student. I started out as a homeschooler, weirdly enough, so I have some degree of experience with what it's like to sit at home an awful lot and learn in some really untraditional ways. And what I want to do with you folks today is to share some of the lessons I've learned about how to fail well in order to get someplace faster that you want to be. So, what the heck am I doing here, and why am I talking so much about failure? Well, because frankly, I fail a lot. I fail every single day, and it's nerve-wracking and it's stomach churning to fail like this. And what I want to do is talk about how we can optimize our time instead of comforting our brain needs when it comes to failure. A couple of special lessons from kind of quarantine land, but at the same time, this is applicable to so much of what we do in our lives, in our time, in our careers. What I know is that failure is what got me where I am, not success. I didn't learn a lot from the successes that I've had. I've learned much more from the failures and the optimizing for better that I've done in the future. So I think most of my education was pretty much a story of failure. I ended up dropping out of or getting booted out of more schools than I ever got a degree from. I had this great conversation with my wonderful spouse, Deviant Olaf, last night, where I was talking about some of the stuff I wanted to do as we were in our house. And I said, I always wanted to take a physics class and a chemistry class. I've never done that before. And he said, didn't you do that in high school? Don't all high schools teach that? And I said, first, no, not all high schools teach that. And second, babe, I dropped out. I have a weird education. It led me in some strange places. I ended up doing academic political economy for quite some time and writing a lot of international conflict in Java. That's how I got my technical and computer skills. And one of the things I learned is first that political economists aren't popular until a massive global pandemic shakes the world. And second, that I was meant to do more than just teach, and I wanted to bring that out into the world. I ended up doing some interesting stuff in technology, which is a story for another time. But one of the things it taught me when I was interviewing a great deal as a woman in technology is that first, in 300 or 400 interviews, I think during the course of one long summer in technology, I learned, first of all, what a lot of failure feels like, how to stretch and ask for more, and second, that there's something, and third, something a little different about being a woman in technology. So I ended up writing a book called Women in Tech that helps women figure out how to present themselves in interviews. It's not a change the world kind of book. It's a here's how to dress and act in an interview so you get paid kind of book. It's trying to be practical in a world where sometimes what we need to be is a little more optimistic. And I hope that the rest of my life I get to be more optimistic about what I tell women in technology. There's some hope. There is some hope out there, and I'm glad to see it. I ended up working my way into some jobs in information security over the course of the last 15, 20 years. And some of the lessons I learned were that unless you're open to the notion of failing repeatedly, you can't achieve successes that are broad enough to get you where you want to go. So when I think about how to fail, I think about three things. I think first of all about how to optimize my time instead of avoiding failure. I think about the fact that failure is good. And finally, I think about the fact that in this field especially, as superheroes, we don't have the option to select only for successes. We have to choose some failures in order to learn. So first, what am I talking about when I say that we need to optimize our time instead of comforting our brain needs? Humans don't like failure. We hate it. We are perfectionists. We want to succeed again and again. And this leads sometimes to this crippling cycle of perfectionism. I know so many folks in this field who feel desperate and afraid of failure and don't recognize that it turns into its own feedback loop, right? So what we see often is that people will set incredibly high standards for themselves. And those standards end up meaning that we often fail. When we fail, it impacts our self-esteem. And then that leads back again to trying to set higher and higher standards in order to try to make ourselves feel better. Instead, consider this. Think about approaching some of the ways that you handle your career and the things you try for, the CTFs you sign up for, the projects that you attempt, like college admissions, instead of like something that you've got to point towards and succeed or fail. If you think about asking for and trying for 10 things imperfectly instead of one thing perfectly, and you've got a 30% shot, perhaps, of getting any one of those 10 things, statistically speaking, you're going to get 3 out of 10 of the things you asked for. If you think about this as college admissions or the chance to improve your career or a guess as to where you might want to send that manuscript or the mentor that you want to reach out to or the person that you want to mentor, you'll end up figuring out that aiming high for something that you have only a 30% shot of, and aiming for 10 of them means you get 3 nearly impossible things. But then there's that feeling of failure for the other 7. It's not pleasant. I hate rejection letters, and I fail more than I succeed most of the time. So what does that tell you about how you're operating with perfectionism and failure over time? What I can tell you is, second of all, that failing is good. It's going to optimize your time. And I want to tell you how it's going to optimize your time. So what I want to do for you today is draw what it looks like to optimize for failure with certification tests. This is my awesome AV guy. There he is. All right. I want to talk to you about what it looks like to optimize for failure when it comes to certification tests like the CISSP or the OSCP or whatever other cert you're looking for right now. And the reason I'm going to do that is, first of all, I think it matters a great deal for people in the industry to continue to try to get continuing education. Certifications matter even more if you're somebody who is traditionally underrepresented in the field. And third, often they're kind of expensive to prepare for, but frequently very cheap to actually take the test. So why do people wait until they're sure of getting 100% on certification tests in order to take the test? Well, I don't know why. I think you should try instead to fail the first time. And let me show you why. So I want you to imagine that this is the graph of what it takes to pass a certification exam. Here's the amount of time that you'll take to do this, and here's the grade you're going to get. Okay? I want you to imagine that this is the curve of time and how much you can improve your grade over time by studying. Now, what we know is that most certification tests are something that you pass with about a 70%, maybe 75%. And here, right about here, is about 70 to 78%, right? So the amount of time that you spend preparing to get to the bare minimum of this right here, of passing this test, is actually a lot shorter than you might expect. So if you end up here and you've used about, let's say about 10 hours instead of maybe the 50 hours it would take to get to 100%, what you've done is you've saved yourself 40 hours of your life, and you've managed to figure out how to use your time well. That's your useful time, right? And you know what this is over here? It's emotional gratification. That's all this is right here. Emotional gratification. That's what this means, right? It's the time you spend avoiding your fear of failure instead of optimizing for the maximum amount of time in your life past a certification. I'm here to tell you right now, I have a CISSP, and ain't nobody ever asked me what I scored on the exam. Nobody cares. They care that I can optimize time and figure out how to get to an efficient result in the minimum amount of time possible, right? So that time spent studying helps me to understand that this is what's useful, and this is just compensation for fear. Consider giving a shot to something like this for less expensive certification tests. And once you've prepared past the point at which you think you're going to pass, there's no point doing the rest of this other than to emotionally satisfy yourself. So what does this mean? It means that initially failing is good. This is the process and the practice that I used last year to get my GMOB, my mobile pen tester from the SANS Institute. Chris Crowley, great teacher, did a wonderful job. It's not his fault. I only got an 81% on the exam. But what I did was I maximized my time on this. I'm being honest. I didn't get a perfect score on that exam. And what I want you to realize is it's okay for you to not be perfect too. This is what lets us be more efficient, more joy-filled in our lives, and find different things to do. I have a lot of stuff I can do with 40 additional hours in my life, right? So that leads us to the last part of this, which is, why does it matter? Why am I caring so much about your time? The answer to that is, in a world where we know, where we are all dealing with, I think for many of us, the first time that all of our relatives are calling us to ask for our advice, not just on computers, but on how the world works. I think we all recognize that the demand for our services and cybersecurity isn't going down anytime soon. Before the global pandemic, the cybersecurity industry was increasing 60% year over year, projected for the next 10 years. There's negative unemployment in this field. We need more people who can do this. And the problem is that we're all so afraid of failure that we don't really stop to think that the failures that we experience are how we build ourselves, how we build the people that we're going to be and become people worthy of respect. If you haven't made mistakes, you can't help other people through theirs. That's the key to being somebody who's like a superhero. And that concept of being a superhero to the people that you love, to the people that you're working with, and hopefully to yourself, has to do with responsibility. I know you've all heard the expression before, with great power comes great responsibility. And what I want you to remember is that when Viscount Melbourne said, with great power comes great responsibility, originally in the House of Commons in a deliberation in the 19th century, before Uncle Ben ever said it, it had to do with the responsibility of people who had technical ability, scientific ability to assist and broaden the horizons of their communities. The original meaning of that sentence, with great power comes great responsibility, is that people who had the new technical ability to prevent diseases, to improve the world, to improve crop yields, have the responsibility to do so on behalf of the people who hadn't yet had the opportunity to gain those skills. Sometimes that looks an awful lot like spending half of my Saturday morning teaching my entire family how to Zoom for the first time. It's okay. Let's all take a deep breath over that one. You're going to be doing that for a while. But at the same time, I think what we do know is that that ability to help people communicate safely for the first time on video chat it's an incredible power and an incredible responsibility. It's something that lets us be filled with joy, feel our responsibilities, and at the same time, it lets us know that every one of those mistakes we always made, getting stuff set up, taking apart computers, figuring out settings, figuring out how to keep our parents and grandparents from clicking on links they shouldn't be clicking on, is the kind of thing that lets us now step forward and take that kind of responsibility and that joy. Don't be so afraid of making mistakes, of failure, that you don't use who and what you are to help people in this world. It's pretty scary to radically expose your ignorance. But if you give it a shot, if you give it a try, and you radically expose your ignorance in a group of people that are kind and knowledgeable, like maybe say CTFs or villages that you might be experiencing today at this incredible conference, that is the opportunity you're looking for to show people that you can make mistakes, learn things, fail, and get better over time. This is a hard time for a lot of people. I'm not okay. You're probably not okay. I can't think of anybody who's just really okay right now. And I found out that the way I normally live is what everyone else calls a lockdown. So if even I, as a nearly 100% introvert, am still every once in a while feeling this sort of bubbling up need to just scream and run off in a given direction and eat popcorn and play with the cat and bike and fly someplace, I think that feeling can be transmuted somehow into something new. Here's the only good thing I found about any of this. In a time of great upheaval like this one, it gives you the opportunity to try and fail quicker than you normally would and pay fewer emotional consequences. No one's going to blame you for failing, for making mistakes, for being somebody who tries right now. And that opens up this world of freedom to screw up and get better, to try something new if you want to. You don't have to. Believe me, if you just take deep breaths and get through the day and learn one new yoga pose by the time you're done with all of this, you're probably better off than I am. And yet at the same time, you've got an opportunity here, an interesting, fun, frightening opportunity to fail faster and give yourself that chance to learn, to be somebody who can be that responsible superhero that everyone's going to need We're not going anywhere in this field. Cybersecurity is going to be around for a long time, and people who feel deeply within them that responsibility, that burden of helping other people, they're the ones that are going to be willing to fail, to try, to do more. Use your time well. You don't have to use it perfectly, but use your time well and more efficiently. Fail things the first time faster. Rapidly prototype your career moves if you can. That's going to be something that lets you get further, be more, be a person who is worthy of the kind of trust that people need to start placing in the scientific and technical minds that are the people filled with joy in this community. Thank you so very much to the folks involved in this conference, and I'm going to stick around and be around in Discord. I'll be on Twitter a little later on today. I look forward to talking with you all, and I hope very much that if you can find a way to use your time now, that it'll bring not just good to you, but give you a wealth and a depth of experience that lets you help other people in the future. That's what I was hoping to say today, I think. And I look forward to talking to you all today. It's a little weird to speak only into a webcam, but I know you're there, and I'm here too. We'll talk soon. Thanks so much, Bryson. I think he's wanted to say a word or two, and I think maybe there might be a couple of questions that we have going on around here. So, hey, Bryson, how you doing?
Hey, so first of all, a ton of positive feedback on Twitter, on LinkedIn, on Discord, in GoToMeeting. So I just want to quick share this. Can you tell Tarah her entire vibe with the candles, the outfit, and background is amazing? Tarah,
Thank you so
thanks
much
for speaking today.
Yeah.
And it was great to also see you represent Right to Repair in Washington. Thanks for all of your efforts.
That's really kind. Oh, again, if I can, really quickly on that one, Bryson, what many people might not know is that you can also do this kind of testimony, especially, I think in many states right now, there are facial recognition and data privacy bills that are being rushed through your local legislatures. Please check your local legislatures. There will often be sign-up forms, calls for public hearings. Many of those public hearings are going to be delivered right now via video message, email, letter. You can do this too. All I did was I just volunteered. So please be aware you can volunteer as well. Get your voices into your legislature. They need to know things like mass surveillance, probably a bad idea in the long run. Data privacy is incredibly important during times of healthcare stress, and also facial recognition is not a solution to mass transportation issues caused with the desire to not touch anything in a public transportation situation. You can do it too. Please, please volunteer.
All right, from Andrea. Great, I need to share it with many women in tech and newer InfoSec people in general. I feel like somebody has written a book on women in technology.
So thank you so much. There's other people that have written amazing books in technology as well too, and I want to point people to the resources, especially if you've got folks that are starting in technology. So one of the things that I do is I started this with the assumption that you were starting to learn to code, that you were at a point where you could go get a job, and structured it as a path to a career. However, I often get the question, how do I get started in InfoSec, or how do I help my friend get started in technology whatsoever? One of the things that I tell them, in fact, really the first thing I tell anybody who emails me this is go to tisiphone.net. Leslie, I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Tisiphone, you know, I read it. I learn words by reading. All right, so go to Leslie Carhart's website. Her blog is the most brilliant resource the entire community has on getting started anywhere. Go there.
Failing a certification is harder because of cost. How can we fail a certification faster, easier, but without that financial cost involved?
A lot of the time, the cost involved is the training, not the certification itself. Pretty good examples include things like anything from offensive security is usually about 30x the cost of the actual test in the prep materials. So one of the things that you want to do is be willing to go through prep materials rapidly and try the test quickly. Now, this is a relative cost, and there's privilege involved in saying you can fail something and pay for it again and again. But usually the cost for the training for any certification is 20, even to 50x the cost of actually taking the exam. That's true for most of the examining bodies out there. And that's not because they're trying to get a lot of money out of you. It's because the time it takes for people to teach you is more expensive than you sitting at a desk for 2 hours with a computer. So be open to the notion, especially if you have the privilege to do so, that you could retake the test several times if you want to. I know I've failed several certification attempts, and I'm perfectly fine with it. It's perfectly fine to fail a couple of times and then move rapidly to the points that you need to target on in order to optimize the amount of time you're spending studying. If you've already learned most of the test perfectly and only have one weak area, that's what that'll teach you.
How can you show HR, human resources, that you're able to work in the InfoSec field? Do I need a specific certification?
That's hard, and I'm gonna tell you that there are a couple of answers. There is the lesser resource and the greater resource one. First, if you're somebody who already has a job in technology and you can code, one of the fastest things you can do is side train for information security by moving into something like compliance or QA, if you've not had an opportunity to do that yet. Compliance and QA and web app fixes, web app security is one of the first things I did in information security. That'll start teaching you the security mindset. For people who don't have as many resources, and God knows right now we are dealing with a crisis in people who don't have money, but do have at least now some, unfortunately, time. And what I would suggest on that one is do CTFs. Do as many CTFs as you possibly can. The reason for that is, first, it lets you connect with people. You want to put a team together. I don't care if the CTF only has individuals, and by the way, all you CTF and cyber range people, create the opportunity for teams. That's the best way for people to learn. So do CTFs, learn things as fast as you can. That's how I learned to take apart an Ethereum wallet. It's how I learned, I finally really grokked the concept of how to build and take apart a cross-site scripting attack. So this is the best way to learn free. And if you do that, you end up eventually starting to rack up some places in, you go to your local B-Sides if you can, get your local B-Sides virtual conference if you can. Almost every one of the virtual conferences now are offering villages or CTFs or both in some way. And put it on your resume. I don't care if you got 17th out of 20th place. 17th place in a CTF is still better than not having done it. And I'm going to respect somebody when I'm hiring who's got a list of CTFs. If they say this is how I could learn, it's what I could do in my free time, I'm going to respect that. Do as many contributes and code commits to GitHub projects involved in security as you can. Your first commit, your first 20 commits could be fixing typos and just adding comments. That's an incredibly valuable service, and people in this community are going to respect that as a way to start out. Is that fair enough? There you go.
All right, one last question. How can we understand how we learn quickly? Some people are better with practice tests, some with reading, etc.
So I can't speak to the pedagogical elements of different learning styles. I think most of us already have a feel. Once you've gone through some schooling, you have a feeling for whether or not you need to take the materials home and study them by yourself. If you work better in groups, if you work better from listening, from reading, from hearing, from talking, however you learn, you've got some feeling for that. You can optimize your path through learning and information security through that path, whether that's learning by teaching, whether that's learning by competing, whether it's reading materials. There's a lot of great books out there, learning in a classroom setting, learning online, or just kind of sitting down and working your way through problems. I often have to find something that starts me on my way. I think like many of us, I think the first thing that I did was I tried to figure out how to download a page from Internet Explorer like decades ago. And I was thrilled when I changed the top words across the top that were something like, I'm sure, like AOL or something like that, to my name in the HTML. And I opened it up and I went, oh, I'm a hacker. I was not yet a hacker, but that was how I got started. Whatever your style is, I'm sure you can work that way out. And I'll also talk more if you want to ask specific questions in Discord too. So I'll join you folks there in a little bit there and ask questions and answer questions as well.
Tarah, thank you. Pleasure to see you as always. And this is the applause I can give for the whole audience.
Thank you. Well, my cat is busy waving for food down here, so I'm going to take that as some applause. Thanks so much.